Hello, and welcome to our build guide for the Essence Drain of Desperation featuring Trickster Ascendancy. The Essence Drain applies a damaging debuff to a single enemy it hits. You can pair it with the Contagion to spread the debuff to nearby enemies and create chain reactions. The transfigured Essence Drain of Desperation deals almost twice as much damage, but also comes with a massive downside. It causes you to lose life proportional to the debuff damage. It is not technically a damage, so you can't mitigate it with resistances or any other form of damage reduction. You can completely avoid it by using a proxy, such as traps, mines, or totems. The trap is the most convenient to use. Contrary to the original playstyle, here you want to throw the trap with Essence Drain first and then cast Contagion. This way you won't be annoyed by the trap arming speed. Additionally, each triggered trap has a 15% chance of generating a frenzy charge to boost your damage further. Both Trickster and Occultist are good ascendancies for chaos damage over time builds. The Trickster offers vastly better defensive options, so it is the recommended variant in most situations. You can also choose the Occultist for slightly better damage, and put more emphasis on energy shield instead of life. The Essence Drain inflicts a chaos debuff lasting a few seconds. It can't stack, but you can continuously throw traps to generate frenzy charges. The Wither, Despair Curse, and Spider's Webs will greatly increase the chaos damage taken by enemies. You will slow down enemies, evade most attacks, and suppress all spells. The Petrified Blood delays the damage you take, which can be easily offset by your excellent life recovery. You should try to avoid particularly lethal attacks and damage over time effects. This build offers an amazing clear speed that scales with difficulty, as your chain reactions are more effective in maps with more enemies. Chaos damage over time skills are quite limited by their damage scaling. It will be good enough for most bosses, but struggles with uber content. You can comfortably clear tier 16 maps with 20 Divine Orbs investments, but optimizing and getting the best gear possible will be expensive. You don't need any particular unique item for functionality, but some uniques are simply better than any rare counterpart imaginable and save you time spent on crafting. The most notable are Cane of Kulamak, Doppelganger Guise, and relevant replica Dragonfang's Flight, but you can easily play without any of those items. A well-rolled Cane of Kulamak is a great weapon that can be surpassed only by the finest rare weapons. Look for bonuses to spell damage, support gem levels, and damage over time multiplier. Mana regeneration is also not to be overlooked, as it saves you a lot of investments elsewhere. The Doppelganger Guise is a perfect armor for this build. It grants you an insane amount of physical and chaos damage reduction, as well as a lot of energy shield and evasion rating. The life regeneration is also useful to offset the Petrified Blood effect. The replica Dragonfang's Flight is simply the best amulet for this build. It offers everything you would need: gem levels, attributes, resistances, and reservation efficiency for both life and mana. With 100% avoidance, you become fully immune to all elemental ailments. It would be quite hard to reach that amount without this jewel. You might need to overcap your spell suppression to reach that goal. The Light of Meaning is a simple jewel that adds tons of extra chaos damage to all the nearby passives that you would pick up anyway. Make sure to pick the correct version. You can get a large amount of extra damage over time multiplier while using the Malevolence Aura thanks to the Watcher's Eye Jewel. You can mix it with other utility options for Grace or Clarity, but it might be very expensive. To improve your damage, you should look for increases to spell, trap, or chaos damage, additional gem levels, or damage over time multiplier. To bolster your defense, look for maximum life, spell suppression chance, and resistance. You will also need plenty of strength for the gem requirements. Use beast crafting to add the aspect of the spider to any piece of your gear. Use the Essence of Loathing to get mana reservation efficiency on a helmet with one good fractured modifier. It should also provide maximum life, spell suppression, and resistance. You can add the aspect of the spider here to ease the crafting process. Your boots are mainly responsible for your movement speed bonuses and ailment avoidance. Don't forget about the usual maximum life and resistance either. Use Eldritch Influence to improve your action speed and ailment avoidance. Your gloves can slightly improve your damage and area of effect with special modifiers, but you should focus on the usual life, suppression, and resistance. You can also add the aspect of the spider here if your helmet doesn't have space for another suffix. At first, you will need a simple ring to cap your resistances or attribute requirements, and grant you plenty of maximum life. At higher investments, you can use essences to add the damage over time multiplier, or chaos damage modifiers on top of that. If you dislike the slow frenzy charge generation, you can opt for the minimum frenzy charge modifiers here instead. Look for simple maximum life, strength, and resistance. It can also improve your flask sustain. It should always be a Stygian Vice as a base to socket extra Abyss Jewel. With the Hunter's influence, you can also increase your chaos damage or get more life. The Abyss Jewel doesn't offer too lucrative damage modifiers, so you should look for defensive or utility modifiers instead. Additionally, look for Corrupted Implicit that improves your reservation efficiency or prevents corrupted blood. On your rare jewels, you should focus on maximum life and damage over time multipliers. They should also provide strength or resistance to lower the burden on your other items. The cluster jewels are much more effective at increasing your chaos damage than the regular passive tree. Look for any combinations of those four notables, and optionally include extra bonuses like resistance or attributes on small notables. The medium clusters offer a lot of damage, but also come with useful defensive or utility modifiers. You can also use one cluster that boosts the damage and trigger area for your traps for smoother gameplay, but it is not necessary. There are no good offensive flasks available for this build. Instead, you can use some defensive or utility flasks, like the Overflowing Chalice, which makes all your other flasks almost always active during mapping, although you still don't have a way to generate charges against bosses. If you opt for the Trickster's immunity to action speed reduction effects, you won't be affected by the petrification. This flask offers you an insane amount of block chance and endurance charge generation, but you would need to activate it manually, as it also requires an enchant to prolong its duration. Other than that, you should use a usual defensive setup of magic flasks that grants you movement speed, evasion, curse effect reduction, and phasing. You will also need the bleeding removal on your life flask. Essence Drain of Desperation fires a projectile that applies a damage over time effect on the enemy. The transfigured version deals significantly more damage but has to be used via proxy. With the additional support gem levels from the Cane of Kulamak, your Empower or Awakened support gems are much more powerful. You can also use other chaos over time spells like Blight of Contagion or Soul Rend, as they benefit from exactly the same modifiers as Essence Drain. The Contagion is an area debuff that deals a small amount of damage and spreads the Essence Drain debuff onto other enemies when the main target dies. The damage of Contagion is irrelevant, only its cast time and area of effect matter here. You could also convert it to Trap, and generate charges via Charge Trap support, but it is quite inconvenient to use. Grace is a defensive aura that grants tons of evasion rating. You can also use the Purity of Elements for ailment immunity and easier gearing. Malevolence is an offensive aura that grants you a lot of damage for damage over time effects. You can also use the Summon Skitterbots if you don't have enough mana to reserve. Petrified Blood prevents you from recovering life over 50%, but half of the damage taken is delayed over time. It also enables the Pain Attunement Keystone for 30% more damage multiplier. You will need the Enlighten support and some mana reservation efficiency on your helmet to use all those auras. The Enlighten support doesn't affect the aspect spells, as they are not granted by skill gems. Clarity grants a bit of mana regeneration. Adjust the gem level to the amount of your unreserved mana. You can also use the Val version to remove all mana costs for a short duration. Aspect of the Spider covers nearby enemies in webs, increasing their damage taken and slowing their movement speed. It can only be acquired as a special modifier on your gear. With Petrified Blood, there is no downside to reserving half of your life so you can get some extra auras. The Arrogance gem has to be socketed in the gear piece that grants you the aspect skill. Wither applies a stacking debuff that greatly increases the chaos damage taken by affected enemies. The stacks last only a few seconds. Use double spell totems to quickly apply all 15 instances of Wither on your enemy. If you have sockets to spare, you could also include faster casting support. Immortal Call is a guard skill that provides a decent amount of damage mitigation even at the low gem levels. Keep those gems at a low level to trigger your guard as soon as you start taking damage. You can also opt for the high level steel skin, but it would raise your strength requirement further. The Despair is your main offensive curse. It lowers the chaos resistance of affected enemies. You should cast it manually for the best effectiveness. Frostblink is an instant teleport that chills nearby enemies to slow them down even more. You can also use the Withering Steps to inflict wither and improve your running speed. Killing all bandits for one additional passive point is the best option for the endgame, but you can help Elira to ease the gearing process. For your major Pantheon power, you should pick the Soul of Arakali that reduces the damage you take from the overtime effects. The Soul of Ralakesh as your minor Pantheon power will greatly reduce the threat of bleeding effects. The leveling process is very easy and straightforward with this build. You will be able to use your full combo as soon as you reach the level 12. The transfigured version will be stronger right from the start, but you can effortlessly complete the campaign with just the regular version too. The final version of the build relies heavily on the cluster jewels to maximize the damage, but there are plenty of useful nodes on the passive tree that you can take to speed up your campaign. For more leveling tips and adjusted leveling tree, visit our written guide on the website. As a trickster, you should aim to pick up as many unique masteries as possible, although cluster jewels are still a better source of chaos damage than regular nodes on the passive tree. Other than that, you will also need plenty of defensive nodes that boost your maximum life, energy shield, evasion, and spell suppression chance. You could also spec into trap damage notables, but the only important notable is the Master Sapper that grants you frenzy charge generation. Considering its position on the passive tree, you should anoint it on your amulet instead. The Swift Killer raises your frenzy charge limit by 2 and greatly prolongs their duration, but it can take some time to fully ramp up your charges this way. You can use the one step ahead notable that prevents slowing effects on you, and get 2 permanent frenzy charge modifiers on your rings instead. We encourage you to give this build a try. It is very fun and satisfying. Thank you for watching the video, and see you in the next one soon.